I'm ready. Hello, everyone. My presentation, maybe the slide, if it's showing. Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you for the Alpaca algorithm patterns for giving me the opportunity to share a bit of my research. My name is Alberto Arres. I'm media designer. I have been calling myself a media designer, artistic researcher lately, but these terms change with time. And I'm gonna share about my research, art scriptures, ceramics as a speculative medium for digital memory. And just to give you the abstract, art scriptures revolved around understanding ceramics as a possible medium to store digital information. It emerges from an impossibility, from the ambivalence between two disparate realms, archaism and future. It proposes an archaic digital medium, a paradox of fragility and permanence, which seeks to resignify the assumed linearity between past and future, deconstruct the idea of vertical time, history, and technology, which is here I'm quoting Fábio Borges, which is a Brazilian researcher who coined this term ancestral futurism, which guided a bit my research. And I'll share here a bit my methodology. This is not a scientific approach. I didn't write a paper about this. This has been an ongoing artistic research with, with many different iterations. So I'll just share my process as it goes. Some of it is, not all of it is connected maybe to the algorithmic, the idea of algorithmic pattern, but some of it is. So I'll just share what I have. This project started in late 2020, 2021. I have been working with archives often, archives of voices. And at this time particularly, I was doing this archive of voices in relation to the pandemic, which was an interesting project. I did like an installation of it, like a database, an API based on these audios. But then I kind of have this anxiety that I'm doing this research, but in the end, I'm doing this archive thinking of memory for the future, but all this data is being stored in these data centers in Amazon, Google. All our memory, our traces of our memory are being delegated to companies that have their own particular interests. We have no agency in how long this information actually can survive. So I was thinking, okay, what can I do about this? How can I maybe change this paradigm within myself? So I looked back to the earliest forms of writing that we have, of memory basically. And clay is one of the earliest materials that we can have records of written language. This is, the cuneiform scripts. So I started this whole process of trying to transform this archive that I have of voices, of audios, into clay. And this was the whole endeavor that now I had, that somehow transform ceramics into a medium to store digital information. So the first steps was transformation in the data. These are very short audio messages that I had from this archive. Like, they were just words basically in different languages. So they were like audios of 1 second that were like 1 second long, 2 second max. So they were very short audios, but still it's a lot of data actually to try to store this in a rough material. And I created this whole system I did many iterations of possibilities of different systems that I could use, but I ended up reaching this system, which is kind of works as a QR code, is a matrix-based barcode in a way that is storing the raw bits of the audio. And this is the technique that I used to put this in ceramic was laser engraving. So I make the clay slab and then I laser engrave it and then I fire it. So in a way, the black marking that you see on the ceramic is as if this part of the ceramic was burned twice. So it's quite resistant um, to the elements. Of course, if you scratch it deep, like rather deeply, it will disappear, but it is very, seems to be very stable. I have no proof that this can last thousands of years, but theoretically at least, yes. So this was the whole, but then, okay, I have this system and now I try to make a device that can read this back. So it was a bit of chaotic process of trying to figure this out. And this is like in a exhibition context also. So I created a software that would read these patterns and try to build the bits back into audio again. So that like I reutilize like a laser engraving machine to actually have a camera that can read this ceramic and try to rebuild the bits back. But it turns out that ceramic is not a really ideal, like a handmade ceramic is not an ideal medium for digital storage, of course. So it was a very flawed process. Like this is the first version of it. So it's like basically you could barely recognize audio from this because the ceramic bends and there's just so many variables that I was still like learning how to deal with. Yeah, so this is like the first iteration, which I exhibited in different places that you could listen to the audio as it went along. My colleague Chihim Chik was the one, he did a sound design on top of it. So yeah, and then based on this first version, I started to I applied for this in different like festivals and things. So the first other iteration that I did was in Bogota, Colombia, where in Voltaje Festival, which is a art and technology festival that happens since many years already in Bogota. I recommend those if you want to show something or see. It's very interesting. So the idea that I was, okay, I'm going to bring this methodology to the context of Bogota, and the idea was I'm going to make a new ceramic piece in Bogota and try to find another context, another social context, historical context, that another system of storage of information that is dealing with this as a site-specific research. So I did this research. This iteration then was all based on this paper by Manuel Arturo Izquierdo Peña, which is about the Muisca calendar, which is the civilization that existed and still resists in what is nowadays Bogota. So, and in this paper, the researcher, he talks about these numeric symbols that were used before the Spanish colonizer. It's not so sure if this was actually real or not. It's a bit on the speculative realm because only a few people recorded this and doesn't know if it's true or not. But it was interesting to me then to use a reference of science of knowledge that does not come from the Western European references. So, and then was also what is I found very interesting in this paper is that it talks about the last ceremony of that happened in the lagoon of Ubaque, which is close to Bogota. And this researcher speculates the idea that this last ceremony was celebrating the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. So I thought this was very interesting that somehow maybe reconnect these things, these numeric symbols, with these astronomical observations of the time. So this next iteration of the ceramics lab, I I adapted these numeric systems to describe time and orientation, to look at a particular position in the sky and a particular time. And these are described a mix of astronomical events and historical events that happen in the history of Bogota. And then this was laser engraved in a ceramic in a clay that was sourced from the region. And then it was laser engraved, and then it was the machine reading this. And then this machine would be decoding these characters using template matching, which is a simple OpenCV like function to recognize patterns basically. And then as this machine with this camera goes through the ceramic, you would read these segments of data, and then it would show the night sky of Bogota in that particular date that is being described in this by these numbers. Yeah, so this was the version I did in Bogota, which was interesting then to remove this. I started to understand this more as a methodology rather than this. I also, it was not audio anymore, because audio is so hard to, there's just so much information in audio that is very hard to create a, like on my own with like a handmade audio data piece. So I shifted more towards like a text-based memory, like encoding. And then the third version I did was in Slovenia, that I got invited for this Pixel Point Festival organized, I forgot the Axioma, which is a very cool organization from Ljubljana. I also recommend the things that they do a lot of publications and events, exhibitions, a lot of interesting things. And for this, again, it's like a site-specific driven research. And the project was supposed to be exhibited on this little house, which is Carinarnica, which was the previous border control room between the border of Yugoslavia with Italy. So, and then you see here the border goes exactly through, I mean, not through the building, but right next to the building. So I thought it was interesting to then this time make a border-based encoding. And then also, because this research, in the end, it's becoming like understanding a data, which is interesting to put in context with the material of clay and ceramics, and then also develop a unique memory system specifically for this context. And also to reminded that this city is also like a very important. It was very important for clay production, and for especially like for bricks and roof tiles. And yeah, like so. And then I made this kind of system, which these characters are actually, I'll say, dead characters from the Slovenian language. These are characters that were lost, that were specifically designed for Slovenian language, but they were dropped. They are a mix of Cyrillic, Old Church Slavonic, and Latin characters. So they are also border characters in a way between different alphabetic systems. So it was interesting to use them as numbers for this project. So again, I adapted this system to encode this particular section of the border. And then again, this machine would read these segments of data and then would live draw on a map. But it also, the material resists, the material has its own agency. It's not, as you can see, the surface is not homogeneous surface. The laser does not behave in the same way across the whole surface. So every time it would make mistakes. And that was also interesting to me, specifically in this case because it's border data. It was interesting to glitch it as well, like the ceramic glitching this data. And that was also exhibited in Ljubljana afterwards, which was also very interesting. And then the last version was in Portugal. Now I did a residency based on this research also. And this one is a bit different. The method, I mean, the process, because I had more time. These ones I did very rushed, like exhibition. It was not a residency. I didn't have time to really develop it as I wanted. But in Portugal, I was in Oficinas do Convento, which is like an old cloister. How do you say? for her nuns and so on. And now it's a artistic center not far from Lisbon. It's also I also recommend a lot this space. And doing the research on this town, I found this panel, which azulejo is for those who've been to Portugal, know that this is a very common technique in Portugal, artistic, like let's say medium in Portugal, to use ceramic tiles as like a artistic, architectural, and is also used for historical purposes to as monuments for cultural memory, historical memory, and so on. And this particular panel depicts the supposed event that happened on this little town that I was, where Vasco da Gama, which was like one of the first Portuguese navigators that went to India in 1496. And this depicts this heroic initial moments of the Portuguese colonial project, so to say. And then I decided to make a reproduction of this panel, almost the same size. It was just a bit smaller, like 2 meters by. Yeah, so I actually made the clay pieces with the borders and everything, and laser engraving the whole panel again. But then what was I wanted to somehow create a counterpoint for this heroic narrative of colonialism, basically. And then I made a list, like a data set of events that act as a counterpoint to this narrative. So these are, sieges, massacres that happened from 1495 all the way to almost the 70s, when the last Portuguese colony in Africa ended. So, and then I was trying to find ways to, okay, this image is not showing, sadly. I attempted different methods of encoding this information on the ceramics, and I ended up in this very simple system of an alphabetic, computational, easy to read for the computer alphabet system, easy to read on a piece of ceramic, because the ceramic is very rebel against the exact borders and definitions that a computer might need for proper, like a homogeneous patterns for the computer to be able to read. So I created these patterns which, by using fiducial markers in the corners, fiducial markers are basically reference points, and then I could overlap these letters on top of the original image and laser engrave it. So these you see here, these are plain texts that refer, like the Battle of Zela. These are different events that took place, and this is the reading system, and this is the laser engraved piece, like many of them on the panel, and this is the full panel. And then there was a machine that I built that would move across this panel a bit chaotically, and then here on the side you cannot see so well, but basically the machine would read these pieces of tiles here, and then it would Google what they mean, like in an automated script. So the machine would be trying to piece back together this history, these anti-monuments. We kind of decode it live. And yes, I'm still finishing. This was not so long ago, so I'm still finishing like the documentation of this version. But basically that's it. So this research, in a way, is this struggle of trying to get data to be readable from ceramics, and the whole struggle process to have like both a device that can read it, the data that can be read, and the data that can fit the scale of it. So there are many variables in play. So yeah, so that's basically it. I'm still understanding how can I frame it all in a methodology or like a theory maybe that I can properly write about. But for now, that's where I am. You can you can contact me, my website, my Instagram, my email, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. It's a really interesting work. Yeah, I also really like how you use the ceramics as a carrier also for digital information. I was wondering how you think about, I mean, there was like quite a development, no? Like starting with a really like kind of binary code on the tiles and then more analog. But at the end, I feel like there's a kind of irony in it because you started, as I understood, from this point of like not having like this more ephemeral data storage memory of like servers owned by companies. But at the end, your translation device also uses at the end the data from the servers, no? And the technology itself, the digital programs, are also similarly problematic in terms of storing them. So I was wondering, like, I mean, it's also, I think, an interesting irony in it. Maybe also unsolvable between like this, the relation between like reading something and having also the tools to actually interpret it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also just put the whole code of the machine itself also on the tiles, but maybe that's a bit out of the topic. But yeah, how do you generally think about that? I was wondering.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's I think I was always struggling like what am I doing? What's the point of this? Because it is a pointless exercise in the end that I'm creating I'm creating the data and storing in ceramic, but then I have to create that device that reads it myself, which does not make so much sense, as if it's two different beings when it's not. But in the end, I think what's interesting is that what I was thinking these last few days, that in the exhibition setting or when you see it live, because the machine needs time to read it, and there's this whole, it's almost, I kind of related more to theater or performance where it creates a drama of the information. Rather, if you just read it, you can read this list of these events and you say, okay, yeah, nice to know about it, but it's different when there's this whole narration and there's material that is potentially gonna outlast the other digital devices, and then there is this machine trying to read it, but then what's the, like, if it depends on the machine, so how does it actually survive? So that's it's a paradox that I also in this research realized, that if you are storing information, you're relying on some kind of a translation system, some kind of a device. So in the way, you can never be sure of that something will last or something will not last, because it depends on so many layers, and science is built on layers of knowledge and language and translation. So in the end, in this last one, I try to keep it the simplest, that it's almost human readable. So it's machine readable, but it's also human readable. So if you you can read this data that is written in this case. So it's a bit different, but I also did it like this because in this original monument that I used is very strong, the colonial narrative. So I wanted to oppose it directly. So there is a context of why I chose this particular way. While in the border one, it was more interesting to let it glitch because of I don't want to, put the border as this thing. I want to make it eternal. So in every case, there's a bit of a discourse of the how and the material and the method used. So it's a. But I think maybe what's interesting in this case is to what I found it very fun is to create our own systems of memory and not just rely on a particular standard that's just everyone's that's just because these systems they come from very particular places, universities, companies. A lot of these systems of memory I came to find out, like barcodes and QR codes, a lot of them come from like companies or private enterprises. So it's interesting to try to develop our own methods with our own materials, and it's a bit all about this all these paradoxes that I was immersed in while doing this. So I don't have like answers to this. These are things I was also asking myself while I was doing it. So but I did ask that many times. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great stuff. Well, you actually answered some of my questions. Why not binary? Have you thought about binary? But it also goes through
about what?
language. Binary. Just encoded black and white.
Yeah, the first one was the audio one was like this. The problem is that there's a limit of space. And because the ceramics is like bent, it's very hard for you to read a straight line on a bent surface using a camera. So that makes it very hard, like to just like the CD works. And that's also made me think like the CD and the vinyl work because they have a medium that puts them in the exact position that you need on a flat surface. And there's a device that will perfectly, and there is the device is designed towards the material, the storage is designed to the device. So, and in this case, with ceramics, that's not an easy thing to. I mean, I was not capable of doing a device, a ceramic that perfectly fits the exact point where you can follow the line and know where you are. That's why I've used this reference, like these
like
markers,
control.
so you know where you are, because that's just the hardest part of encoding memory in ceramic, for me at least. Yeah.
That answers.
How about the sonogram instead?
Like analog.
Yeah, sonogram where you have, you know how they work, that like you have time and like frequency on the other side, and the darker or the lighter, the dots.
Yeah, this also I also consider, but the problem is also that how can you, the ceramic not being a homogeneous material, how can you assure that something that is in a particular gradient of dark, it's a like it will change through the surface. And also if the surface is not fully even when you laser it, that already also changes the gradient.
Yeah. I was suggesting it because it would be more forgiving than binary, because as you said, like to scan a line,
True, yeah.
then like if you kind of, if it's warped, then there's, a lot more like unreadability, whereas with the sonogram, maybe like you still get the idea of what the sound sounds like, even if the surface is a bit warped.
Many people suggested me this kind of approach, and for some reason I never did it. Maybe I should, but I was somehow also very into the whole idea of binary and date, and I don't know, this first version, maybe because I didn't attempt it with audio again. Maybe if I do another time with audio. But then the issue is, this is 1 second of audio in this ceramic at 8 bits with 1200 sample rate. So that's the lowest quality of audio. Just 1 second for this piece of ceramic. So it's a bit like, and it takes time to read it. So in a way, but if I did this project again for audio, I would consider doing some other method, because this was a bit like insane solution, but I also like how it looked and the pattern and that it generates. So that's also why I like chose to do it like this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, a question. Are you exploring or plan to explore other means instead of clay, like maybe leather or ways that in which information has been stored, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, in light of the same philosophical questions that you had?
Maybe, but afterwards I realized, and it's a project, another project I did afterwards, that I like where I'm from. There's a very particular, the soil has a very particular red clay. There's a lot of clay where I come from, so that's also why I chose this material, because it somehow takes me to my own references of memory. So in a way, I chose this because of this historical references, but in the end, afterwards I realized that it actually was a very personal decision. So that's why I'm probably gonna stick with it, and that's also why I always do red clay, like very specifically. So, but maybe it makes a lot of sense to do it in other materials like bones and wood and metal and leather, as you said. But maybe I'll do it, but other people can also do it. All my projects are open source, so everything is on my GitHub. So you can also try to do it. I don't know. Someone feel free to explore it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, thanks, Alberto. Yeah, we should probably move on to Maria Jose, but a quick round of applause for that lovely presentation.
Thank you.